Welcome to Bedhampton Church. Contact us at www.bedhampton.church. But for now, let's continue that journey with this input. Well, today is one of those times when we look at the history of some of our hymns that we sing, their links to Scripture and the impact on our lives. Today's hymn always appears in the top 10 of any list of favourite hymns, and it's Mari's choice today, of course, Abide With Me. Now, Abide With Me was written by priest Henry Francis Lyte, who lived a fairly shortish life, I guess, full of much illness between 1793 and 1847. Reverend Lyte was born in Scotland but studied at Trinity College in Dublin, and he was a prolific writer and poet. After graduating, he took holy orders and was the vicar at Lower Brixham in Devon. Now, as ever, these things aren't always straight, and we're a bit unsure about the exact time that he wrote the poem that would become our hymn. Some say that Lyte wrote or composed the poem after visiting a friend who was dying in 1820. However, in 1847, Lyte wrote a letter to his daughter Julia, where he referred to the hymn as my latest effusion. Because why use an easy word when you can use a complex word, eh? So maybe he wrote the hymn earlier in 1820 and then recorded it or amended it later on in 1847. As he approached the illness that would lead to his death. One evening in that year, he was preparing to leave the parish for warmer climes because of this ever-encroaching tuberculosis he had. And he walked down his garden path and on to the seaside. It was said that he was deeply sad and felt much in the same place as those disciples walking with Christ on the road to Emmaus from our Gospel. Returning home that evening, he wrote out the hymn, or perhaps perfected the text he'd already written. Soon after, he left for the south of France and those warmer climes in the hope to ease his illness. However, after arriving in Nice, his strength failed him. And whispering the words, peace, joy, pointing heavenward, he died. The tune that we sing most often, of course, we know very well, is Eventide, composed by William Henry Monk. Is that correct? He's nodding over there, so that's good. I always worry about those sort of things because Carol can put me right later on, can't she? But I'm right this time. So composed by Monk, and again it's said that Monk came across Lyte's poem and was saddened that it wasn't connected to a tune, so wrote that. But also it's said that actually the first time this hymn was sung was at Lyte's own funeral. So I wonder what tune they sang. Maybe they chose, as they often did in those times, a tune from the many sea shanties sung in Devon. I don't know. Perhaps they did. Perhaps they didn't. So that's the story that I have of the hymn. And of course, now we look at the story of the scriptures connected to the hymn, and it's plain, really, with this one, isn't it? Our Gospel from St. Luke is clearly linked to that. Lyte himself said so. However, it is possible to miss the link to that Luke passage if we read it in our modern translations, which say in verse 29, stay with us as they talk to Jesus, for it's nearly evening, the day is almost over. But those of you who recall the King James, and probably the Bible that Lyte himself might have read, that verse there is translated, abide with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is far spent. Making that connection to the opening line a bit clearer. That line that we sang, abide with me, fast falls the evening tide, the darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. I can say the text was obviously connected to that gospel. But actually, for me, as I read Lyte's story, and he's crying out to God in his deepest, darkest times, there are hints of the spirit of the Psalms in that song. which is a slightly naughty wordplay from me because Reverend Light himself was very keen on the Psalms, indeed writing his own paraphrase of the Psalms, which he did call the Spirit of the Psalms. And I don't know what psalm particularly Light found brought him most peace, but I thought the psalm that Nigel read for us, Psalm 27, could be one of those psalms that he found peace in. For in the day of trouble, it says, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high on a rock. So the story of the hymn, the story of the scriptures, and that leads us to our story with this hymn and the scripture. If God ever uses words outside of the Bible to complement his scriptures, and I believe he does, then abide with me must surely be amongst those words that God uses to bring us peace. What happens when things go pear-shaped in our lives? And I'm not talking about when things go wrong in the world, but when things go wrong in the very personal level. Where do we turn? Where do we turn when the earth's joys grow dim and its glories pass away? Our example in Reverend Light would be to remind us to turn to the one who can make a difference into eternity. It's perhaps an obvious connection, and I know the answer is always Jesus, but in this case it certainly is. Reverend Light does not speak out of theoretical understanding. He is in a very dark place, knowing that he's going to die. He speaks from a very clear, literal place of pain and sorrow as he scribes those words for us. He's not suggesting that we should have some Pollyanna approach to life, that once we turn our life to Jesus, everything's suddenly okay again, and things that go wrong simply vanish away. No, Light is talking about how we react when things do go wrong. Echoes of 1 Corinthians in his writings as well. Where is death's sting, he says, doesn't he? Where is death's sting? Where, grave, thy victory? I triumph still, if thou abide with me. You know, after doing this research, I wondered if we could ever sing that song the same way again, actually knowing where Reverend Light was when he penned that text. It's a personal resonance, isn't it? It's him declaring his trust in the Lord. Let us, my friends, let us always declare our trust in the Lord. And let us remember that every time we sing. Heaven's morning breaks and earth's vain shadows flee. In life, in death, O Lord, abide with me.
You have been listening to Bedhampton Church. Our prayer is that this helps you journey with Jesus and serve your community by sharing God's love and friendship. Subscribe and join us for more discussion at www.bedhampton.church. All material Creative Commons copyright. Contact us for more details.